Hey, today we're making potatoes with cheese sauce. But a couple things I want to point out before we start. When you do this, you're going to need 3 photographs or pictures. The first photograph must contain your ingredients, a date time device, and your face. If you're missing any one of those 3 elements, you don't get points for that photograph. I don't care if you get 2 out of 3, you gotta have it. And if you don't have it, you won't get credit. The second photograph is your finished product, date, time, device, and your face. And the third photograph is the clean kitchen, date, time, device, but now the date, time, device is going to be later. So that's going to tell me that you cleaned up your kitchen after you cooked. A couple of people tried to send me a picture of their clean kitchen before they started. That's not acceptable. Okay, this website right here I want to share with you is called timeanddate.com. And there's a button right here. That's kind of hard to see. It says full screen. When you click on that, it gives you a nice big date and time image that you can use for your photographs. So that's something I want to recommend. Okay, looking at our recipe, baked potatoes with cheese sauce. We need to start with 3 potatoes, a tablespoon of olive oil, and a tablespoon of kosher salt. This is kosher salt. It's a little bit grainier than table salt, bigger chunks, not quite as big as ice cream salt, but bigger than table salt. If you don't have it, not a problem. Just use what you have, table salt. And these measurements aren't absolutely vital that you stick with them. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is our pre-step, and that's preheat our oven to 400 degrees. So here's my oven. 400 is right there. Bake. Step 1. Wash and dry potatoes. I already washed and dried my hands before we started because you don't want to watch that. And I washed and dried my potatoes. Now I have 2 different types of potatoes here. These are called russet potatoes, and they're your typical baking potato. They're good for baking. But I also have a red potato here. It's good, not especially designed for baking. If you're going to microwave your baked potatoes, this one works really nicely in the microwave. You can microwave these too. Somehow they just don't quite come out as good as the ones that you bake in the actual oven. If you want to learn a little bit about potatoes, this website right here is called jessicagavin.com/types of potatoes. I'll give you the link. And she talks about, briefly, different types of potatoes and why you want to use them. You got your starchy potatoes, waxy, etc., etc. The russet potato, oh, see there, they come in red skin. Purple potatoes, they're actually purple inside as well. Where do we go? White potatoes. Oh, here's a purple potato right there. So anyway, if you got a couple minutes, go to jessicagavin.com/type of potatoes and learn a little bit about potato types. So we're going to use russets and a red potato. First thing we're going to do is cover them with olive oil. So don't be afraid to get some olive oil on your hands. If you don't have olive oil, that's okay. because any oil will do. I know what you're thinking. That's an awful lot of salt. Well, it is, but a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, most people don't eat the peeling. And so that salt soaks in a little bit, but not very much, because the peeling is a barrier. So if you don't eat the peeling, it's a non-issue. If you do eat the peeling, all you have to do is wipe off the salt before you eat it. I like to eat the peeling, and I don't like a lot of salt, but for baking, it's good to have on the outside. So make sure it's liberally covered in salt, and you're going to put this in the oven directly on the rack, but you're going to put something underneath it because it's going to drip, make a mess. So I have a pan underneath it. Again, any kind of oil works fine. And, oh, I started to say this. It's okay to get this olive oil on your skin. It's really good for your skin. And, excuse me. Again, you're not going to eat all that salt, so don't fret. It just helps the skin come out nicely. And you can probably guess what I'm having for dinner tonight. That's right. Spam. No. Baked potatoes. And I think I got some meat in the refrigerator that I'll grill up. And there's my fourth potato actually. And we're going to let that bake for 1 hour. Okay, that timer means my potato is done, and I did, well, at least the timer says potatoes are done, excuse me. And I did check on them a minute or two ago, and they do, at least one of them appears to be done. So I'm going to leave that in the oven for now and go ahead and make my cheese sauce. Step 1 says remove your hot potatoes from the oven and set aside. I'm going to go ahead and leave them in the oven because I don't think they're all quite cooked. 2, in a medium saucepan, make a roux with the flour and butter over medium heat. R-O-U-X is a French word, and it spells roux, not roux, roux. Can't tell you how many times students have come to me and said, "What's a roux?" Which isn't funny, except that I've explained it many times before that. So we need about a tablespoon of butter or margarine and a tablespoon of flour. Now, flour we've practiced measuring before. Here's a tablespoon. That's bigger than a teaspoon, remember? And I'm going to put that in my saucepan. Saucepans are like this. They're tall because you're making sauces in them, and you don't want to spill. Whoa. Now, how do you measure butter or margarine? Well, there's these little lines on the side, and as you can see, they're not 100% perfectly in the right spot, because 8 tablespoons, 1 stick is half a cup, Half a cup is 8 tablespoons because a whole cup is 16 tablespoons. Half a cup, 8 tablespoons. And you can get an approximation by where you cut on the stick. So this line right here is off about 1/4 of an inch. This should be actually right on the edge. And it's obviously slipped off. But if it were lined up right, that would be a tablespoon. As a matter of fact, it's okay if we're a little bit over. So I'm going to cut right there. And that's a tablespoon of butter. And a tablespoon of flour. Okay. We do not want to use metal tools in non-stick cookware. This is non-stick. It's got Teflon on it. And if you use metal tools, it'll scrape the finish off because it's non-stick. This right here, somewhere, this is cast iron. You can use metal on that. But for non-stick, you need to use wood or plastic tools. And like I said, this tall pan is a saucepan. This is not a saucepan. You would not want to use this for making gravies because it would spill over the side very easily. All right, so we're going to make a roux. A roux is equal parts fat and flour. It can be any kind of flour: butter, margarine, olive oil, vegetable oil, bacon grease. Any of them will make a roux. And we need 3/4 of a cup of milk. Sorry, I should have had this out to begin with. I'm using whole milk, which is roughly 4% fat. And I need 3/4 of a cup using my liquid measuring cup. If you don't have a liquid measuring cup, use a dry measuring cup. When I grew up, that's all I had were dry measuring cups. But if you got a liquid measuring cup, there it is. So here, my butter is melted. I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit. And my flour is in there. And I want to cook my roux some. Otherwise, it has a pasty taste. And so I'm actually, because I did a little extra fat, I'm going to do a little extra flour. Now this is called a thickening agent. Really the flour is what's doing the thickening. But if we were just to dump flour into milk, we would have something very lumpy. Flour needs to be encapsulated with fat so that it doesn't lump up. Now, when I was a kid, I used to try and make cheese sauce often, and I would heat up some milk and throw some cheese in it. And the problem is, because the cheese is solid and the milk is liquid, I would have stringy melted cheese in the milk, and I never could quite figure out how to do that. Now that I'm an adult, I know you need to start with something called a bechamel. A bechamel is a thickened white sauce. Sometimes it's called basic white sauce, the mother sauce. But basically, we're going to thicken our milk with the roux. Now, it doesn't thicken immediately. It needs to come to a boil before thickening can take place. While that's happening, I'm going to measure out my cheese, and I need 1/4 of a pound or a cup of shredded cheese. If you don't have already shredded cheese, then shred your own. I like to use sharp cheese because it holds up, it holds up its flavor when mixed with the milk. But if you don't have sharp cheese, you don't have it. So I'm using this Mexican style 4-cheese blend. I'm just going to set that aside for now. Okay, so this bechamel is going to thicken after it comes to a boil. And it will not thicken until it comes to a boil. It's already starting to thicken. So the roux is what makes the flour act as a thickening agent. And here we have a bechamel. Now, if I made this with bacon grease and put chunks of sausage in it, I would have country gravy. Okay, there's my thickened bechamel. I'm going to turn off the heat. Take it right there. Dump my cheese in. Make sure you take it off the heat before you do this, because the heat actually can break down the cheese more than we want it to be broken down. And because the bechamel is already thick, it mixes with the cheese, which is a solid. And so here is my cheese sauce. You can add a little salt to it if you want. Not too much. You can always add more salt. You can never take it out. All right, let's get our potato. You want to check and see if your potato is ready by squeezing it. It should be soft and fluffy on the inside. Now, I told you I like to eat the skin, so I'm going to brush off all that salt. I don't want to eat it. It's already done its job. But you can leave it on if you're not going to eat the skin. All right. Okay. A little cross on your potato, and you're going to, it's hot. Ooh. Open it up like this. Squeeze it together. To that, that. I'm going to ladle on my cheese sauce. Now, I know I'm using a metal tool here, but I'm not going to touch the sides. Being very careful. And you can put some green onions on that, sour cream, butter on the potato, whatever you like. And there is my baked potato with cheese sauce.